Isle of hope, Isle of tears, Isle of freedom, Isle of fears, but it's not the isle you left behind. That isle of hunger, Isle of pain, oh, you'll never see again, but the Isle of home is always on your mind.
My name is Bill Pare. I'm a member of the St. Patrick's Chapel Historical Society, and the society was put together primarily to rescue this very, very historic, very, very simple building, which is, I find, is extremely beautiful because it represents so much work that we were involved, but it was not always this way. Right? It's the interesting thing about the chapel right now is the fact that it's celebrating its 200th anniversary this year. Get a better idea of what this story is all about if we simply go inside, okay? Here we are inside St. Patrick's Chapel. Obviously, when we came here 20 years ago, this place looked a little different. But I think maybe what we need to explain is why this chapel is here, tucked in the extreme northwest corner of Cecil County, okay? We're out in the middle of nowhere almost, right? So why is it here? Well, it was here primarily to provide religious services to an Irish population. And why is that? And much of it is attributable to the fact that this was a very, very busy area in 1819, right? The Pennsylvania border is only about 100 yards up the road here, right? And the Susquehanna River is less than a mile to the south of us. And this was at a very, very busy spot next to the traffic, commercial traffic from the central part of Pennsylvania, where all the farm goods were shipped down to Baltimore. That shipping, however, had required canals because of the rocky nature of the Susquehanna River at this point. So to dig a canal, in those days, the expression was, all you needed to dig a canal was a spade, an irishman, and a shovel, right? So basically, the Irish population increased rather significantly. The area was under the jurisdiction of the Baltimore Diocese, right, and served by St. Ignatius Church just north across the river in Harford County. And so in 1819, Father Roger Smith bought a half-acre lot from Daniel Glacken, right here, for $10, right? And within that same year, this very, very simple box was built, and that's how St. Patrick's Chapel came to be, simply to serve the Irish population in the area, right? Well, you realize what happened to the canals at the time. That commercial traffic was taken over by the railroads, right? And so the railroads did away with the canal traffic, and the railroads did not require the Irish workers at the time. Those Irishmen went to work in the quarries, right? The final blow was building the Conowingo Dam. When the Conowingo Dam was built, the water backed up by the river simply submerged the town of Old Conowingo. That town was no longer there, the population was gone, and that was in around 1926 to 1927, right? So the population to support this little chapel simply disappeared, right? Even though at that time the care for the chapel went to the Diocese of Wilmington and also the parish of Good Shepherd in Perryville, okay? And periodically people would come out to try and fix it up. And that lasted for a few years, right? In 1934, there was a large group of people that came out. There was a huge mass here, and they made promises to restore the chapel. It was completely dilapidated, but even after this promise in 1934, obviously World War II occupied much of the people at the time. There were attempts after that to restore the chapel. I think Bishop Mardiga in 1974 celebrated Mass here in a slightly restored chapel. But then again, nothing was done until around 2000, right? When a temporary pastor from Good Shepherd, Father Corrigan, made simply the statement while he was saying Mass here that he thought that an Irish lad like himself had better pay attention to what was going on here, otherwise he would have to pay for it in later life. So a number of us who were newly retired started collecting money to restore the chapel. And we established a nonprofit organization which was incorporated in the state of Maryland and called the St. Patrick's Chapel Historical Society. And then we went to work to collect money, and that took us about a good, almost 10 years. Once we decided that we had enough money, the restoration work started. One of the most critical parts of that restoration was the fact that the northeast corner was rather rotten. The building literally was sinking on that corner. What they did, they simply bolted I-beams on the side of the building, right? And then passed I-beams across, and then were able to lift the whole building, right? They rebuilt the foundation, then set the building down, right? And as you can see, they replaced a lot of the timbers, right? Matter of fact, here's one here, and as you can see, everything was put together with pegs like that, okay? Then once the building was settled on this foundation, the work on the inside started. We were lucky in the sense that we did have access to pictures of the inside of the building before all this restoration. So what the original chapel looked like on the inside, and therefore we were able to mimic that and do all the decal trim work to simply replicate what had been here originally, right? So the altar, the tabernacle are all original, so also the pedestals. As far as the Stations of the Cross are concerned, we're not too sure when they arrived, right? But they were certainly here when we started work. The pews, obviously, which were stored in a trailer during the work, right, were all original. An interesting story has to do with the organ, right? The organ was first purchased in around 1850s, and when the chapel was in very little use around the 1880s and 1890s, it went to St. Agnes Church in Rising Sun. And the organist there, when they received a new organ, right, she took the organ home. When the chapel was restored, her daughter and husband showed up at the chapel with the organ, okay? And so that the organ that's up there right now is the original organ that was here in the 1850s. And it's a beautiful, it's a pump organ, right? Sounds squeaky, but it's absolutely adorable, So our organist, when we have a service here, uses it, and I'm reminded of that story every time that happens, right? A few days ago, we had a group of grade school students from Good Shepherd Parish here, one of the students kind of obviously looked at the ceiling and saw the pipe up there and asked me what that was all about. And I told him, obviously, that was for the stove, because at one time here they had a pot-bellied stove with the spot was right there where the short bench, and that was hooked up to the chimney right here, right? Another student kind of looked at the glass and said that he thought that there were some funny panes in the windows, and since the windows are original, so that's the old glass has a tendency to show that wiggling effect, okay? When the chapel was built, again, you have to remember that this was all, the chapel was part of the Archdiocese of Baltimore, and the bishop there at the time was Archbishop Marshall, right? And that historical fact is amply recorded by his symbol right there on the altar. Why don't we go outside and take a look at some of the grave markers and continue our little historical tour out there, okay? All right, so the grave markers here at St. Patrick's are rather seen quite a few. However, I think they did suffer a little bit through the years, and some of them are still, some are missing, right? But probably some of the more significant ones are, this is the grave marker for Daniel Glacken. That's the family that essentially sold the property to the Catholic Church for building the chapel. And of course you can see that a lot of the stones in this area are all from the Glacken family, okay? This family is still active in the church and today, and very, very, very supportive. And of course some of these, the more famous family is the Fulton family, you know, located right here. Yeah. Recently, we were very, very happy to install this historical marker, and for the simple reason that it emphasizes the significance of this building, right? That when this chapel was built, it represented a rather significant event for Irish population in the United States, right? The simple fact that Irish people in their home country, because of the political picture there, were not free to build their own church. Whereas here in this country, right, they were free to do that. And then, of course, that was an act that was simply ensured by the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. So we felt very, very proud when we were able to put up this marker last year, and I hope it'll be here for many, many years to come, right? So I think it adds a little bit of class to the whole place, right? So.
I love hope, I love tears, I love freedom, I love fears, but it's not the isle you left behind. That isle of hunger, isle of pain, you'll never see again. But the isle of home is always on your mind. Yes, the isle of home is always